Welcome, welcome, welcome. And as all of the podcast channels come online here, we are just about ready to start and we're going live. So I just want to say thank you and thank you for coming on Mental Health Mondays. I'm so appreciative of all the people who tune in, chime in, and come on board to Mental Health Mondays. We like to do this every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have any questions, you can always contact me via email, drpaulwdyer@gmail.com, or you can actually contact Dr. Ryan C. Warner also. You can find him on LinkedIn and all your Instagram and social media. What is your email there, Ryan?
So you can email me at Ryan at rcwarnerconsulting.com.
Okay. Well, that's I we this week has been all weeks are always different, and they're always different. But when things come up, I make it a point to bring it out on Mental Health Mondays. And the reason for that is today, hold on, my puppy is telling me something. Hold on. And I got to listen because if I don't listen, I apologize, people here on Live World, and things get in the way when you have a home studio. But it's fascinating. My dog is going to remind me that we still, no matter what we're doing, have to pay attention to people we love. And I love him, and he was trying to tell me something, and I had to listen, and it was for him to go outside. So today, I was at the hospital, Ryan, and one of the people in the hospital must have went there for something particular, and you could tell it was mental health because he walked out screaming that he was not getting help. So it made me it made me think, because I'm always thinking about how people are feeling and acting when I see them and how they move, how they displace their aura, right? He was traumatically upset. I don't know where he went, what line he was in. He had verbally spoken yellingly that he was not being heard. And this hurt me deeply because this is a hospital atmosphere. And wherever he was and what office he was in, he must have had to wait for something. I don't know. I don't know anything about what he had. What I do know is he was walking down the hall. He's talking about how he's going to hurt people, how he's going to hurt his wife, how he's going to hurt himself. And the place, the hospital, I'm not going to give names. They're not here to help you. They don't care anything about mental health. I wanted to go, but now it turned into a police thing, like the police on staff and the security turned into that type of thing. So, what are your thoughts so far, Ryan?
So obviously, the individual was in some form of distress, right?
Right.
And sometimes, as an outsider, a bystander, we may assume certain things about that person, but we don't know what that person was going through,
No.
right? And obviously, they were trying to get their needs met, and it seemed like their needs were not getting met based on their standards. And ultimately, it seemed like maybe they didn't have a lot of strategies as well in that moment to manage, that distress that they were in.
And I think and what really put me back is and I really do hope this person gets the help they need. I hope he's in a better place now. But it had to go to a physical thing before whatever he is getting, the help he is getting now. It's now it's going through these different phases, and that's what we talk about police officers too. Like we don't know what type of, but this person was in distress. How do you know? He was in a hospital at a mental health station asking for help. He either had to be weighted or he wasn't being seen fast enough. Whatever the case was, he only thing I saw was I was in the downstairs waiting area. that it exploded into, and I heard him screaming probably 2 minutes prior to me seeing him and watching him the other 3 minutes as he's walking out the front door, screaming at the top of his lungs. So this was going on in my hearing, visual for 3 minutes, hearing for 5 minutes. So he must have been screaming for a while about how he was not being heard. Now, in a hospital, no matter why you're there, I don't care if you're there for a hangnail. There's something about a hospital when you don't feel like you're being heard. It really takes us into a whole different level of pain.
Yeah. I mean, think about it, because you go to this place and you seek care.
Right.
And once again, when that care is not being met or not up to your specific standards, then yeah, it makes sense why emotion would come up.
I kind of think there's not too many places, I was thinking of this on the ride home, that will give you that sense of explosion. I thought of hospital. I thought of a school for youth, right? If I'm not being heard in a school, I am going to go sideways, because where else? This is a place I am majority of my day in life, and here I'm not being heard. A workplace, if I've been there for a long period of time, if I feel like I'm not being heard. If I've been there 6 months, not being heard is not that big an issue. But if I've been there, I think in my mind, I was driving, I'm like, so what's the time frame of not being heard where you can actually be physically upset? I would say 3 years. I don't know why I came up with 3 years, because I think 6 months is too small. I think a year is kind of short. You're getting to know the ropes of a lot of things depending on your work atmosphere. I think 3 years. I think if you are there at a job for 3 years and you can't get the help you need for whatever reason, I don't care if it's your computer being broke. You know what I mean? Like you call IT and IT says, yeah, we'll be right there. It's just no matter what it is. I think we tend to be upset because we want to be heard.
Yeah. It makes sense. I mean, 3 years personally seems really long to me. I don't know if I can manage that for that long. I mean, any amount of time not being heard is too long, right? So,
what do you think? I want to get into some solutions, but what do you think? What about a marriage? When is it, like when we come to marriage or partnership? There's a lot of partnerships and marriages, whatever how your relationship is. That if you don't feel like you're being heard, when do you think there's a tipping point? Is there a time frame of a tipping point? Like 2 weeks? Is 2 months? Like, what do you think is a good, like a tipping point?
Yeah, well, I guess let's first dive into what it means to not be heard, right?
Right.
Because
Thank you.
sometimes we feel we're not being heard, but
And we are.
but in turn, we may be bringing our own stuff as well to that relationship, that we perceive things maybe inaccurately, or we may not hear that other person, right? So we may feel our needs aren't being met. The other person may feel that their needs are not being met, and it may go both ways. But sometimes we only see our perspectives, right? And we put our blinders on. But there's some times in which, obviously our needs are not being met. I don't know if we can put a specific time frame to it, but ultimately.
But I don't think we can put an emotion to it too, because we come with such a charged emotion, right? Like you said, if I feel like I'm not being heard, I'm already now charged. So whether it's a day or 2 weeks or 2 years, I'm being charged with that internal, I want to be heard. I need to be heard. So in a relationship, you're right. So you probably really can't put a time limit on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it varies in the situation as well, right? But ultimately, we have to figure out how can we convey our needs the right way to improve the likelihood that we can get our needs met. For instance, if I go out to the restaurant and my order is wrong, and I start screaming and yelling at the waiter or waitress, my needs are not being met, you're doing a horrible job, then I'm probably not going to get those needs met, right? But if I be mindful of my communication, figure out how I can control my emotions in the moment, even though a mistake was made, then I can, present myself in a way that's going to improve the likelihood that those needs are met. Once again, I use improve the likelihood very carefully, right? Because sometimes we feel like we can utilize interpersonal effectiveness strategies. And if we say things this way, then we're 100% going to get our needs met. And sometimes that's not the case, right? Especially when it comes to, interpersonal relationships. But we can do things differently, especially if you watch our communication, our tone, our body language, and that can improve the likelihood that we can be able to accomplish whatever goal we're trying to, meet.
Some of the ways I think I've been writing just recently on this article I wrote about controlling your breath speed. Okay. I know people say take the time to control your breath, take a deep breath, but prior to you speaking, understand how your rhythm is flowing. Maybe check your own pulse, because just because you slow down your breath and take deep breaths, your pulse is probably still very high. If you're speaking in high pulse, more likely you're not speaking in a balanced state because your blood is pumping very high. So you're probably in a state of, I don't know, flight, some type of flight, like I need to get somewhere, go somewhere. So I think that would, to me, I think if you want to take one thing is to slow down your pulse, not just slow down your breathing, slow down your pulse before you go to the next stage to get your point being heard. And that's where you say being mindful of your speech. So prior to you being mindful of your speech, I think you got to slow down your pulse. And if you're unable to slow down your pulse at the time, I think speaking at that time isn't going to be beneficial.
Yeah, another thing that we can do is be mindful about that physiological response to stress. We know that when we're actually more stressed, our fingertips actually get cooler and our blood rushes towards our internal organs, right? And ultimately, if we're able to sometimes feel our fingertips and we may realize they're a little bit more cool, then that could be a sign that our fight or flight, the sympathetic nervous system is starting to kick in. There's a lot of different strategies that if we just be more mindful about our body, right? Because, our body is connected with our mind. And we can also implement those techniques that you talk about when it comes to controlling breathing, controlling your pulse, et cetera, so that we can get more control back. Because sometimes we may feel like powerless, over our emotions, especially when those emotions start to heighten.
And if we feel like we're losing power, then even if we're not being heard, or even if our perception is not feeling like we have not being heard, you're actually going to take this to a level that doesn't need to go there. I think, and that's also what you said too, about like start screaming at the waiter. I don't think you want to go there just because you feel like you haven't been heard, especially when you haven't done all these other practices. You know what I mean?
You mentioned a very important word, feel.
Yeah.
We oftentimes misconstrue our feelings with reality. Mm-hmm. I feel that I'm a bad person.
Right.
I feel that I'm not good enough. Right. And we take that as reality, but in turn, that's just an emotion, and that emotion may come and go. We may feel that we're not a good person right now, but maybe tomorrow we realize that, hey, I am a good father. I am a good husband, right? I am a good sibling. Once we find that evidence in our life, but yeah, mixing our feelings with reality often I've seen comes up a lot. I know that we all do it. I know I do sometimes too.
Yeah, we just, like you said, it here, listen, people, if we are being repetitive, and I'll tell you what I mean by repetitive, by saying you can be mindful of your thoughts and what you're thinking, because if you're not aware of what you're saying, I'm not sure if you can ever get the results that you want to get, because you don't know where those words come from. Does that make sense? Because if you're just spouting off because of your feelings and you're not understanding the history of your process, then you're probably regressing into something that has nothing to do with this state we are in right now. Whatever the moment we're in right now, you probably are pulling from a regressive or a past situation, and you're bringing forth it into the now. And that becomes very convoluted when it comes to the communication you're having with the other, whatever that other is. That other's like, will be like, what are you talking about? It could be your boss. It could be the hospital, right? I don't know. I really do hope this person got some help today because he's been on my mind. That's what made me think of this thing. But so be careful of what you think the person understands about what you're trying to say.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely agree.
How, when it comes to back to the relationship, when we don't feel like we're not being heard, how do we clarify to ourselves that we are not being heard?
Mhm. I think it starts with awareness because sometimes we are reactive. Well, a lot of times we are reactive, right? And if we, oftentimes we're not thinking about, hey, I'm not getting my needs met. I feel this way. My body's starting to get hot. My heart is starting to race. Okay, let me take a breath. We're not sometimes going through those motions, right? But that emphasizes the point that we need to sometimes slow down before we react. Okay. When an intense emotion comes up, the first thing we can do, the best thing we can do is sometimes just wait and just before responding, just sit there and wait. Think about a time, maybe I think about a time in my life before COVID, I used to love to shop. I was at the mall all the time, right? And once I saw that really nice shirt, I was like, hey, I need to get this shirt. And sometimes I was impulsive and I bought it. And I came home and I was like, I don't even need this shirt. I have 100 shirts in my closet that look the same color, right? It has the same color. And if I just took that moment, took a breath and said, hey, I'm getting kind of excited. That's an intense emotion, right, for me. And instead of buying this shirt right now, let me walk around the mall one time, right? And then if I come back and I still like the shirt, then I can get it.
Right.
And 9 times out of 10, when I took that break and I walked around the mall, I came back, I realized I don't even need that shirt, because that rational part of my mind kicked in. So I gave my brain some time to cool down, right? And I was able to think a little bit more rationally so I can make a better decision. And sometimes when we feel that our needs are not being met or we feel that intense emotion, sometimes we just need to take a break and we just need to sit for a second. And that's going to help us reevaluate the situation and think and act in a more responsive and clear way.
I think there was a couple of keywords. Dr. Ryan said this was clear. That's key. Clear is key, and rational. If you're unclear, you'll never be rational. That I just think. And what do I mean about being clear? How do I know if I'm clear, Dr. Paul? Because I'm in this state. I'm in this environment. This environment's very clear to me. I know exactly why I'm upset. I think like it goes back to clearness is going back to the awareness of the body, your telltale signs, the coolness of your fingers, right? The pulse. Those areas of exercise will inform you that you're not in a clear space. I've been in intense situations, even in the military, and my pulse rate has never raised. And that's because goes back on my training, my practice, and all the things I'm sure of. So once you get too in a hyper state, you're going to do a lot of things wrong, and you can get a lot of people killed. Dr. Ryan, we're going to, when people go to, again, I want to do this as more of a solution-based question. Not that we'll have all the answers, people, but we want to try to give you some helpful ideas. I think we're heading towards a crisis of food shortage. We already know the supply chain is down. We already know there's increase in food costs. We know there's an increase in fuel supply. We know the fact is that we have less truckers in the United States for whatever. There's a lot of things that are pooling. So I want to get we call preemptive and ahead of the curve when people start to feel, oh no, those words of, oh no, I don't have ... If I'm a parent, I don't have enough to feed my child. I may not have enough to feed my child. I don't think I'll have enough. Whatever those feelings of anxiety that's going to come because of something that you have no control over, but yet you still have to deal with them. What are some of those pointers you can help those? Because I think we're heading towards that pandemic we can see. The other one, the COVID-19, that hit us like that, right? That just came. This food issue is something that it's coming and people can start to see it. And for them to start to say, okay, I can't panic. What do you think some of those tips they can have for themselves?
Yeah, I think that's tough because
Yeah.
that's a tough situation, right? And I mean, oftentimes if we don't have control over a situation, then we can get wrapped up and think about everything that we don't have control over. But if we're also able to find that balance in our mind about, hey, yes, here are 10 things I don't have control over, but here are maybe 5 or 6 or 7 things that I do have control over, right? Maybe I can start looking up resources, or maybe I can contact somebody who can support me, right? Thinking about those type of actions, could be helpful as well. So I would start with there. Yes, there's a lot of things that we don't have control over, and maybe acknowledge that, and acknowledging that those emotions around that, but also looking at the other side and thinking about, hey, if you just can think of one thing that you can take advantage of, that you can take action, that you can take control, to get that power back in your life, that could be helpful.
Yeah, I think that's so good. I think that's so helpful because I don't want people to really hear that very succinctly, very clearly. Um, there's some things you're just not going to be able to control. You can't, but understand who you are and what you're able to be and what you are already, right? Um, understand your love, your compassion, your kindness, your care, your community, your friends. All these things are resources. They are. They're you now if you feel yourself that who can I depend on? I can't depend on anyone. No one ever helps me. Why should I help them? I don't think that's clear. To me, I don't know if that's clear thinking, Dr. Ryan. What do you think?
Mhm. Yeah, I don't think it is either, but that's natural thinking, I guess. That's the first thing that comes up for a lot of us, and I do want to normalize that as well. There's nothing wrong,
Right.
for those thoughts to come up. But it's important for us to acknowledge them and be aware of them. Because being more aware of that thought process is going to improve our emotional intelligence, is going to help us take action. Like, for instance, if I know nothing about cars and there's warning lights going off in my car, and I just say, hey, I don't know what that means, I'm just going to keep driving, then what's going to happen to my car?
Right.
It's going to break down. Yeah. So, but if I'm more aware that, hey, this light must mean something, I need to do something, rather than be, hey, I realize my thoughts are starting to race. It's starting to impact my sleep. And I realize that I'm having a lot of chronic pain recently because I may be stressed, and that may impact that, right? Identifying these warning signs is essential for us to get that support we need, whether that be professional support, reaching out to a friend or a trusted family member, whoever that may be. It's important that we identify, hey, I need some support, and then be able to take that action to get the support we need.
I think when you identify the people on your support staff, I think preemptively make a list. See if people can write down a list. It's like one of those things, like those old sales things, right? Write down 10 family friends that you could talk to about this if you thought you had a great idea. We'll write down a list of 10 names that you believe is a support staff for you. Now, I hope your list isn't broken up to, well, I can count on Ryan for this and I can count on Paul for this, but I couldn't count on them both for the same thing. I'm not sure if that's a good list. I just want 10 names that you can count on 10 people. If you get 10 people, some people may never get 10 people, but a list to say, who do I contact if I'm low on this? I make up a disaster. I don't want to put a disaster in your air, but create something and then have that conversation with people. Because before it happens, at least you know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I like that term, support staff. And yeah, being able to convey to that individual or individuals like, hey, I'm okay right now, but just in case, a crisis arises, or just in case I need that support, I just want to make sure, you're there for me.
Right.
And if you identify the right people, then they would not have a problem, right, with you reaching out to them. But yeah, giving them a heads up and also making a plan just in case you need that support in the future, that could be helpful with being proactive instead of reactive.
And I think before more crisis, and then if people didn't think of it during the COVID-19 and when that hit us, if we become proactive with this and create that support staff system, because I tell you, the real quick one, I'm going to throw this out there to the audience. If your car got stuck on the side of the road, who would you call? A lot of people would have to go, besides their spouse, that's if they would answer. I don't know if they would have their phone on, depending on the type of, you know what I mean? They start going through this thing, and you may not come up with a name right away. Well, if you have this list, you're going to have this person, like you said, because you'll have that conversation to say, hey, I'm not saying you the only one. I'm saying, would you be on this staff? This way, I think it opens up a dialogue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree. It's nice.
If we get caught in a situation and we don't have anyone, reach out to us, because that's going to put you in a whole different anxiety list. And you're going to feel like I just have no one. And that's a place that I'm not sure if it's true. I think the people you least expect, it's probably those people that will be for you. So don't discount people so easily because you're not as close with them that you believe you are, because those could be the people that will support you the most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes we feel that we may need to handle things on our own.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe we learn from a young age, hey, don't reach out to help for help. You can handle things on your own. Or, we may get these unconscious messages,
Right.
and in turn find it challenging, right, to reach out for support. But it's important to know if we want to be there for others, if we want to maintain a sense of well-being ourselves, then we can't do it alone. Well-being is a team sport, and we need that support staff, as you say. We need that team behind us.
I just think we're just going to keep with this informational base every Monday at 7 p.m. Mental Health Mondays is very important. We talk about mental health. We keep beating the mental health drum. We want to keep sounding the sound, not the alarm. Because I don't want you to feel like this is the last of the 12th hour, but we're definitely sounding the bells of you waking up, because we want you to know. You need to know exactly where you are at this place now so you can help yourself to get to a place later. Because if you feel like you have no one, well, let's work on that now instead of when you need them, and really feel like this person that was at the hospital. He felt like no one heard him and no one did. That's why he was screaming. I don't want you to get to that place where you have to scream for you to be heard. Have a plan now.
It's great. Yeah, I like that. Great message.
Anything you want to say? How was your week? I didn't ask you about your week, but how's your week been before we take off?
Oh, so I was sick a couple of days ago, last week, but luckily I'm better now. So I took the
Good.
weekend to just relax and recuperate. So yeah, ready to get back to work.
If anyone has any questions for us, you can always contact us. Ryan, give your email again.
Ryan at rcwarnerconsulting.com. You can also visit my website to learn more about my services and the support that I offer at www.rcwarnerconsulting.com. You can also Google my name, Dr. Ryan C. Warner, to find out more about the work I'm involved in.
Thank you, Ryan. We need to talk more about. I know I want to get into some inclusion stuff too next Monday, especially how when people feel excluded, kind of like what we talked about today with this hospital. You can always contact me, Dr. Paul W. Dyer at gmail.com, and just reach out to me on social media and just raise a hand, share, like, love. But more than anything, be compassionate, be kind, and be loving, and be safe. Thank you so much. Everyone have a great, safe week, and see you next Monday.
Thank you.